Hello and welcome to the Broken Sword. Today we are having a look at the greatest fire-breathing dragon of the Third Age, Smaug.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
Smaug. Lord Smaug the Impenetrable, Smaug the Golden, Smaug the Magnificent. These are a few of the names that the great fire-breathing dragon that rained his fury down on the dwarves of Erebor is known by. He is one of the few dragons we get to spend any real time with from Tolkien's world, so I thought it would be fun today to have a look at this beast of a creature and see what we can find out about him. So let's jump into it. Now we start off with a time of mystery, as we know basically nothing about the origins of this dragon. However, we can start with knowing that he was at least quite young when he decided to make his move on Erebor, as he describes himself having been, but young and tender when he first came, where he is now, being during the time of the Hobbit, old and strong, as he gloats to Bilbo. So, he was still young in the year 2770 of the Third Age when Smaug the dragon descended on Erebor and destroyed Dale. But you may wonder, why did he even do this? What was the point of this attack? Well, when we look at Appendix A of The Lord of the Rings, we get given the answer to that. So the rumour of the wealth of Erebor spread abroad and reached the ears of the dragons, and at last Smaug the Golden, greatest of the dragons of his day, arose and without warning came against King Thror and descended on the mountains in flames. It was not long before all that realm was destroyed, and the town of Dale nearby was ruined and deserted, but Smaug entered into the great hall and lay there upon a bed of gold. So it was greed that pricked up Smaug's ears. Being a dragon, Smaug loved treasure and wished to claim it all for himself, so he set off from what is assumed to have been his previous home further north in the Grey Mountains and descended on the Lonely Mountain. It is thought this was his home, because it was said after the First Age the dragons who survived the War of Wrath fled into the Northern Waste, which is the area furthest north of Middle-earth, further than the likes of the mountains of Angmar or Mount Gundabad. And then, by the Third Age, they had come a little bit further south, now with some of them in the lands called Withered Heath, and this is in the eastern parts of the Grey Mountains. Smaug was said to have been the mightiest of those that lived here, and that may well be why he was the one who was confident enough to travel south and attack the Lonely Mountain. Here, Smaug was not just some brutish creature who just relied on pure power, he was clever. His first move was to draw the dwarves out of Erebor, so to do this he set fire to any wood in the surrounding area to smoke them out from their home. Then, as they emerged from the front gates, Smaug picked them off to make light work of these panicking dwarves. Once he was done with his starter, Smaug moved on to the main course, Dale. Here he killed most of the warriors of Dale, which included the Lord of Dale, Girion. Smaug would then return to the mountain, satisfied with the chaos he had caused, and entered Erebor through the front gate to sit upon a mountain of gold that was kept within. He killed any dwarf that had tried to re-enter the mountain, and anyone who had managed to escape all of this with their lives either fled into the wild if they were a dwarf, or to Lake Town if they had been in Dale. For over 150 years, Smaug remained here, sat on his pile of gold that even included the likes of shirts made of mithril and the Arkenstone, with mithril being a very rare material that was gathered by the dwarves from the mines of Khazad-dûm, being incredibly strong, very light, and extremely rare by the end of the Third Age, and the Arkenstone was a jewel that was a prized possession of Thrain I during his time of rule under the Lonely Mountain. It was also known as the Heart of the Mountain, very treasured to his family and a great loss to them. Time would pass on and Smaug would rarely leave the protection of Erebor, only going outside the gates when the need came to carry people away and destroy a little more of Dale. And although this is never said, I assume this was done really to keep everyone aware that he was still there, and that he should not be disturbed. However, eventually, he would be. And I'm actually curious here, with today's video talking pretty much solely about Smaug, would you like more content on the Dragons of Middle-earth too? After all, me being Welsh and having a dragon on our flag, they are the kind of magical creature I would always love to talk more about. There are the likes of Ancalagon the Black, Glaurung, Scatha, or even just more general topics of the different types of dragon, anything like that. There is still plenty more content to cover if you want to see it. So, if you would like to see these, please leave a comment of dragons in the comment section below. But anyway, now Smaug has had his rest, let's get back to his story. As we reach the year 2941 of the Third Age, now 171 years after the first sacking of the city, a company of dwarves made it their quest to reclaim the home that was stolen from them. But how did this decision come to be? How did any dwarf have the bravery to believe that they could really take down this almighty dragon? Well, a lot of it comes back to Gandalf. A question that often comes up when talking about Smaug is whether Smaug and Sauron were in an alliance with each other, or if they did form an alliance, how deadly would this have really been? Within Middle-earth, Gandalf too thought this way. During this period of time, Gandalf had two main things on his mind. The issue of the necromancer who was living within Dol Guldur, who he would discover to be truly Sauron, and also Smaug, with the power that this dragon possessed becoming an unthinkable thing if he teamed up with Sauron. And so, if we go back to Appendix A of The Lord of the Rings, we get a section looking at this subject. Among many cares, he was troubled in mind by the perilous state of the North, because he knew then already that Sauron was plotting war, and intended, as soon as he felt strong enough, to attack Rivendell. But to resist any attempt from the east to regain the lands of Angmar and the northern passes in the mountains there were now only the dwarves of the Iron Hills, and beyond them lay the desolation of the dragon. The dragon Sauron might use with terrible effect. How then could the end of Smaug be achieved? It was even as Gandalf sat and pondered this that Thorin stood before him and said,
Master Gandalf, I know you only by sight, but now I shall be glad to speak with you, for you have often come into my thoughts of late, as if I were bidden to seek you. Indeed, I should have done so, if I had known where to find you.
With Gandalf at a pass of just what to do, there came across this chance meeting between the dwarf Thorin Oakenshield, son of Thrain, king of Durin's folk, and the wizard, and both of these would wish to bring down the dragon. This is when Thorin's company and the quest of Erebor would come to be. 13 dwarves, the wizard Gandalf and the hobbit Bilbo Baggins would set out from the Shire in 2941 and reach the Lonely Mountain on Durin's Day, which Thorin describes as being the first day of the last moon of autumn on the threshold of winter. Bilbo Baggins was the first to enter the dragon's domain and lay eyes on this great beast, and here Bilbo first took just a single cup. Also here, with it being the first time that the Hobbit Bilbo lay eyes on Smaug, and the first time that we really see Smaug in the Hobbit story, now is probably a good time to address the question of, how big was Smaug? Smaug's actual size is never specifically mentioned, and the most famous artwork of him can massively vary too. I feel like the most accurate one to look at would probably be Tolkien's own drawing, although I will also note this passage from letter 27 of the Letters of Tolkien. Actual size? Only important if other objects are in picture. Say about 3 feet or 3 feet 6 inches. The Hobbit in the picture of the Gold Hoard, chapter 12, is of course, apart from being fat in the wrong places, enormously too large. But, as my children at any rate understand, he is really in a separate picture or plane, being invisible to the dragon. So Tolkien knew that his own drawing was off scale, meaning Smaug may be larger than some people think. It was estimated in Karen Wynne Fonstad's Atlas of Tolkien's Middle-earth book that Smaug must be around 18.3 meters long based on Tolkien's drawings. So, if we then take the enormously too large quote, we can tell Smaug should be a great deal larger in turn. So, you may end up thinking at something around 4 to 5 times the size perhaps, so that would work out maybe somewhere around 80 to 90 meters. It is quite hard to give an exact number to enormously after all. If we also take a quick look at Weta Workshop's VFX breakdown of Smaug 2 from the movies, then they say they designed him to be twice the size of a jumbo jet, and at a quick Google, a Boeing 747 is said to be roughly 70 meters long, which means you are looking at around 140 meters long for Smaug in the movies. However, this is generally considered to be perhaps a bit too large, with him just being made bigger for the spectacle of film. So, that makes that size of being closer to just a bit less than 100 meters long more likely. We may never really know for sure, and I'm sure that there are some awesome people who can work it out more accurately due to descriptions of the size of secret passageways or the damage that he causes when he is killed, or something else like that. But to be honest, that is a little too much for me, I will admit. So personally, I will lean towards the about 100 meter mark, at least in my own imaginations, but I would be very curious to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this mystery down below. But now, back to the sleeping dragon in the story. As Bilbo first entered, Smaug would not awaken. He felt the draft of the secret passage though, and noticed that a single cup was missing when he awoke. Smaug was enraged. He left and scoured the mountain for the thief, but could not find any of the company, so returned to his bed of gold. Smaug was clever here again, as he feigned to sleep when Bilbo returned. Despite Bilbo having the one ring upon his finger, Smaug could smell the thief. This was a new smell to him, nothing he had ever come across before, so it sparked an interest in the dragon. Bilbo tried to confuse Smaug too by talking in riddles, and it really worked in the end. The dragon stopped short in his boasting.
Your information is antiquated,
He snapped.
I am armored above and below with iron scales and hard gems. No blade can pierce me.
I might have guessed it, said Bilbo. Truly there can be nowhere be found the equal of Lord Smaug the Impenetrable. What magnificence to possess a waistcoat of fine diamonds.
Yes, it is rare and wonderful indeed,
said Smaug, absurdly pleased. He did not know that the Hobbit had already caught a glimpse of his peculiar undercovering on his previous visit, and was itching for a closer view for reasons of his own. The dragon rolled over.
Look,
he said.
What do you say to that?
Dazzlingly marvellous, perfect, flawless, staggering, exclaimed Bilbo aloud, but what he thought inside was, Old fool! Why, there is a large patch in the hollow of his left breast as bare as a snail out of its shell. Smaug was then left alone, much to his frustration. The idea that someone thought that they could get revenge on him was just pure insanity. This riled him up again though, so he went back out to the mountainside and smashed up the area he thought the secret passage lay in, trapping the company inside. Smaug had a new thought here. The only way that this thief could have possibly gotten in was with the help of others, with the help of the Lake Town people, and this was due to Bilbo referring to himself as Barrel Rider. So there was only one thing to do: destroy the town. Smaug's rage was great, his fury was terrifying, and the people of Lake Town suffered from it. His scales were too tough for simple arrow fire, and so he went about destroying and setting alight the town and its people. However, something happened here that Smaug was unaware of. There was a thrush, a large speckled brown bird that the men of Lake Town and Dale could understand. And this thrush had overheard the conversation between Bilbo and Smaug, and so passed on the information of Smaug's weak spot to Bard the Bowman of Lake Town. Bard was a descendant of Girion, and he would then pick up a black arrow that had been passed down through his family and fire it true into the gap in Smaug's defense, bringing down the dragon, albeit his falling body destroyed a great percentage of Lake Town. And so, the greatest fire-breathing dragon of the Third Age, Smaug, was brought down. His body would be left where it fell into the water, and in future years his bones would still be visible to those that looked upon where Lake Town had once stood. However, no one would dare to go near it out of fear, despite there still being gold and gems around it. Smaug was just like many dragons of the past, greedy, strong, and wicked. He loved to hoard treasure, especially gold, and had a temper that flared up quickly. But nonetheless, one arrow shot in the right spot was still enough to bring down this mighty beast. And so, from here, at the end of this video, I will ask you all my question of the day, and that is, how deadly do you think it would have been if Sauron and Smaug had formed an alliance? Do you think the side of good would have really stood a chance if this had happened? Or do you actually think they would have just brought down the dragon easily enough if there was an army there to do it? Let me know all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. And now firstly, just to finish off, to quickly mention our other channels, as they will be linked in the description below, and also to shout out our patrons. Firstly, our Divine Power tier members of Kevin, Abram, Matt, and Glorfindel of Gondolin. You are all awesome, and a big thanks to our Fire Demon tier members of Nashith, Danversteel, and Gregory, and as well I cannot forget the Wizard Staff tier members of John and Andrew. You are all true legends of the Brohirrim. And finally, a massive thank you if you have managed to reach the very end of this video with me today. Please consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell icon too if you have enjoyed what you've seen, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.